Your card got declined again. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was for me? Before you press play, take a breath, because this story begins with silence and ends with a truth no family expects. That was the first thing my daughter-in-law said to me that morning. No greeting, no pause, just her sharp voice slicing through the quiet kitchen as she slapped a crumpled receipt onto the table. The sound echoed in the small space, louder than it needed to be, like she wanted the walls to witness her outrage. I looked up from my tea, the steam drifting lazily toward the window, and simply blinked. Not startled. Not apologetic. Just calm. My calmness irritated her more than the card decline. It happened in front of everyone, she continued, pacing like she needed the drama for oxygen. Do you know how that makes me look? How it makes us look? People already think we carry too much responsibility because of you. I stirred my tea gently, watching the teaspoon circle the rim. I didn't answer. Not yet. My silence had a weight this morning, one she wasn't prepared for. She kept misreading it as weakness, but today that silence carried something else. She could sense it even if she couldn't name it. The clock on the microwave read 7:14 a.m. Sunlight pushed through the blinds, falling in thin lines across the counter. The fridge hummed. A neighbor's car started outside. Ordinary sounds, but they felt louder because she was furious and I wasn't reacting the way she hoped. Are you even listening? She snapped. I heard you, I said softly. She hated that softness more than anything. She wanted a jump, a flinch, a panic. Something that proved I still lived under the weight of her disapproval. But all she got was steadiness. She froze for half a second, her eyes narrowing. Why are you so calm? You should care about this. I didn't answer her question. I simply shifted my mug an inch closer, my fingers brushing the wooden table. The movement was subtle, but she watched it like it was suspicious. Maybe it was. Because inside that drawer beside me, just inches from my hand, sat the first envelope that would change everything. She didn't know that, of course. She thought I was the one unraveling. She took a breath and began again. I was at the salon, Mom, she said, emphasizing the word mom, the way someone emphasizes a title they don't respect. Front desk full of people. And the girl announced out loud that the payment didn't go through. Loud. Everyone turned and stared at me like I was irresponsible. I had heard this story already. Twice. She came home last night loudly explaining it to her husband and then again to a friend on the phone. But this retelling was for me, to shame me for a decision she thought was accidental. I sipped my tea, tasting the faint hint of lemon I had squeezed in. Warm, steady, grounding. I'm sorry that happened, I said, still in that calm tone that seemed to unravel her. No, you're not, she shot back. You should feel bad. You should have checked your limits. You know that salon membership is important. I smiled faintly, not a happy smile, not even a sarcastic one. Just a tired smile of a woman who had accepted her role as the silent provider for far too long. The kind of smile older women learn after raising children, sitting through arguments, swallowing disappointments, and choosing dignity over shouting. She saw the smile and stiffened. You think this is funny? No, I said gently. But I do think it's interesting. Her brows drew together. What's interesting? Before I could speak, she reached for the bread on the counter, exhaling dramatically. I swear you make everything harder. You know what? Maybe we should go through your expenses today. Maybe you shouldn't be handling things anymore. There it was, another small disrespect disguised as concern. She'd been inching toward saying this for months. Maybe longer. A gentle push here. A comment there. A subtle suggestion that I was forgetful or incapable. These things never came all at once. They came like little taps against a window, barely noticeable at first, until one day the glass cracks. I watched her move around the kitchen. Her movements were sharp, irritated, territorial. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. She pulled open cabinets, searching for the more expensive coffee she liked. The one I bought for her even though I never drank it. You didn't buy it? She asked, checking twice. No, I said. Why not? Didn't need it. She stared at me like she was hearing a foreign language. You don't need it. I do. And you know that. I tilted my head. Do you? She slammed the cabinet. The sound jolted the dog sleeping near the refrigerator. Mom, what is wrong with you today? You're acting strange. Strange. That word startled a small laugh out of me. The first sound of amusement I'd let slip all morning. She looked offended by the laugh, as if I had broken some unspoken rule about staying small. Before she could continue, footsteps came down the hallway. My son entered the kitchen, still buttoning his shirt, his hair messy from sleep. "What's going on?" he asked. His wife immediately launched into her story. "Your mother caused another scene. My card declined again and she doesn't even care. He didn't ask me what happened. He didn't ask how I felt. He didn't ask whether something might be wrong. He simply turned to me with a mild frown, as though my existence had inconvenienced his morning. Mom, you should have warned us," he said. "You know we rely on that account." We rely on that account. Not thank you for supporting us. Not we appreciate what you do. Just reliance, spoken like an obligation I had failed to fulfill. I placed my cup down slowly. My hand didn't shake. In fact, I felt steadier than I had in a long time. "I'll take care of it," I said quietly. And that part at least was true. I would take care of it, but not in the way they expected. As they continued arguing, I observed small things I had ignored before. The way their voices rose only when speaking to me, the way they dismissed my opinions with quick glances at each other, the way my contributions were treated as debts, not gifts. My daughter-in-law's tone sharpened. "Honestly, Mom, you can't handle finances anymore. It's obvious. Maybe it's time we—" She stopped because I finally turned my head and looked directly at her. Just one look. Still, quiet, held for a second longer than usual. And she stepped back. It wasn't a glare. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't anger. It was simply awareness. A look that said I wasn't the person she thought she could mold anymore. A look she had never seen from me before. I opened the drawer beside me. Both of them watched my hand move, their argument dying mid-sentence. They expected me to pull out a notebook or a bill or some document proving I was confused. Instead, I placed a sealed envelope on the table. Clean, white, heavy. My son frowned. "What's that?" "Something you should see," I said. They both stared at it like it was a snake coiled and ready to strike. "What's in it?" my daughter-in-law asked. "Something I've been preparing," I said, my voice even. "For some time now." Her face paled, not dramatically, not theatrically, but subtly. A quiet recognition crept in. For the first time she looked unsure of her footing. "What does that mean?" she asked. "You'll find out," I said. I didn't open the envelope. I didn't explain it. I didn't reassure them. I left it on the table like a single stone shifting the weight of an entire mountain. My son reached for it slowly. My daughter-in-law grabbed his arm. "Don't. Not yet." "Why not?" he asked. Because I don't like this," she whispered. And that whisper was the first honest thing she'd said all morning. The room grew still. Even the dog lifted its head. I folded my hands in my lap and watched them. My breathing was steady. My heart was calm. Everything inside me felt controlled, precise, prepared. "You both should sit," I said softly. Neither of them moved. A quiet tension stretched across the table, thin as glass, ready to shatter. The microwave clock clicked to 7:29 a.m. Outside, a car honked. A bird landed on the porch railing. Ordinary sounds. But the air in the room had changed completely. "Mom," my son said, his voice tightening, "what's going on?" And I looked at him. Really looked at him. Seeing the boy I raised and the man he had become, standing somewhere between love and habit. "This morning," I said, "something shifted." "What shifted?" he asked. I leaned back slightly, my gaze steady. "High tolerance," I answered. The moment the words left my lips, they both stiffened. And that was where the morning split open. Right at the edge of the confrontation, right before the truth would begin to unravel. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. The next move was theirs. My son didn't move. My daughter-in-law didn't breathe. And I kept my eyes on both of them, letting the silence stretch the way a thin wire stretches before it snaps. I didn't speak because I knew the next move had to come from them. And when neither of them reached for the envelope, I simply stood up from the table, pushing my chair in gently, the wooden legs scraping softly across the floor. The sound made my daughter-in-law flinch. I didn't say where I was going. I didn't owe them that. I walked toward the counter, rinsed my cup and placed it upside down on the small dish towel beside the sink. My hands were steady. Steadier than they had been in a long time. And it was that steadiness, more than anything, that began to shake them. "Mom," my son said again, his voice strained, "you're scaring us." I know, I replied calmly. But I'm only doing what needed to be done. Those words tightened the tension in the air even more. And as I dried my hands on the towel, something inside me shifted again. Something small but noticeable, like a door unlatching. Before anyone could speak, my daughter-in-law's phone started buzzing. She grabbed it quickly, her eyes still fixed on me. A moment later, her gaze darted to the screen and her eyebrows pulled together. "What now?" my son asked. She didn't answer him. She just stared at her phone, pressing the button again as if the screen might change if she insisted hard enough. "Try again," she muttered. Another tap. Another shake of her head. "What happened?" he asked. "The app won't open," she said, her voice sharpening. "It keeps saying, authentication failed." "Why would it say that?" I didn't respond. I turned away as if her panic had nothing to do with me, though we all knew it did. She entered her password again, faster this time, jabbing the screen with her thumb. "It's locked," she snapped. "Why is it locked? Did you change something?" She turned to me abruptly. "Mom, tell me you didn't." I didn't answer. I simply walked past them, heading down the hallway. My footsteps were slow, deliberate, each one echoing just enough to remind them I hadn't left the conversation behind, only shifted it forward. Behind me, their argument began again, quieter this time but more frantic. "She's doing something, I'm telling you. You're overreacting. Then why won't anything work? Why isn't the bank app opening? Why did the salon card decline?" Their voices trailed behind me like threads pulling at a fabric that had already begun to unravel. I reached my room and sat on the edge of the bed. For a moment, I listened to the familiar creaks of the old wooden frame and let my hands rest on my lap. The early morning light fell across the quilt, highlighting every stitch I had made years ago, back when life felt simpler. Back when giving came from love, not obligation. I heard footsteps approaching, hurried and uneven. My son appeared in the doorway. "Mom, what did you do?" The question itself was revealing. Not did I do something, but what? He already suspected. He just didn't know how far things had gone. "Sit down," I said. He hesitated, then stepped inside, closing the door halfway behind him. He perched on the chair across from me, his knee bouncing, his hands restless. "You've never been like this," he said. "You've always told us before making decisions. You've always talked things through." "That was my mistake," I said gently. He blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I talked," I answered. "You didn't listen." He opened his mouth but no words came. His face softened in a way I hadn't seen in years. A flicker of the boy he once was appearing behind the man who had grown too comfortable with my silence. "Mom, if something is wrong, you can tell us." "Something was wrong," I said. "For a long time." Before he could respond, my daughter-in-law's voice cut through the hallway like a sharp gust of wind. Your car is being towed." My son jumped up, confusion etched across his face. "What?" I rose more slowly, following him out of the room. When we reached the living room window, my daughter-in-law was already outside, her robe flapping as she waved her arms at the tow truck driver, shouting something I couldn't hear through the glass. My son rushed toward the front door. I walked behind him, the calm in my chest growing like a quiet flame. We stepped onto the porch. The cool air brushed against my skin. The tow truck driver was tightening a strap around their shiny SUV, the one they insisted was necessary, even though it drained more money than 3 households combined. "What are you doing?" my daughter-in-law screamed. "Ma'am," the driver said in a flat voice, "the account used for this vehicle is in default. I have orders to repossess." "That's impossible," she shouted. "Run it again. Run it right now." The man looked exhausted, like someone who had encountered people like her many times before. "I've run it. More than once. It's not a mistake." My son turned to me. His voice was quiet but loaded. "Mom, did you stop paying for the car?" The question wasn't angry. Not accusatory. It was simply stunned. "Yes," I said. My daughter-in-law spun toward me like she had been physically struck. "Why would you do that? You know we need that car." "You use that car," I corrected softly. "Not me. That's not the point." "It is the point," I replied. The driver cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I need the keys." My daughter-in-law clutched her robe tighter. "We are not giving you anything." My son rubbed his forehead. This is unbelievable. I watched him carefully. Not to gloat. Not to revel. Just to see whether realization was beginning to dawn. And it was. Behind the confusion was something else. An understanding that their life depended far more on me than they had ever admitted. "We'll straighten this out," he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. The wind shifted slightly, rustling the leaves along the edge of the driveway. The morning was still so early, yet everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. "I'll get the keys," he finally said, voice heavy. My daughter-in-law stared at him in disbelief. "You're not actually agreeing to this." "What choice do we have?" he snapped. Her expression crumpled. Anger, fear, embarrassment all colliding in one sharp exhale. As he went inside, she turned back to me, her voice low but trembling. "This isn't fair, Mom. You can't just pull the rug out from under us." "I didn't pull anything," I answered. "You stepped on a rug that was never yours." Her lips parted, but she couldn't respond. Not because she didn't want to, but because she had no argument left. When my son returned with the keys and handed them to the driver, something in her collapsed. Not physically, but the shift was visible. Her shoulders drooped, her voice lost its edge, her confidence dimmed. The driver nodded respectfully at me before securing the vehicle fully and climbing into the tow truck. As the engine rumbled to life, my daughter-in-law stood frozen, her hands shaking at her sides. The SUV rolled away, the sunlight flashing across its surface one last time before it disappeared down the street. My son stared after it, silent. She finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "What else did you do?" It was the first honest question she had ever asked me. I didn't answer. Not yet. The time for explanations hadn't come. Instead, I turned and walked toward the house. Each step felt lighter. Not triumphant. Not vengeful. Just honest. For the first time, the truth was not something I swallowed. It was something they would have to digest. Inside, the envelope still sat on the kitchen table where I had placed it earlier. But now they looked at it differently. Not as an inconvenience. Not as a mistake. But as a warning. A beginning. My son walked in behind me, his footsteps slower now. My daughter-in-law followed, clutching her phone, trying another bank app. Another error. Another lockout. "What's happening?" she whispered. I looked at her gently. "Life," I said. "Real life." My son sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. "Mom, how long have you been planning this?" "A while." "And we didn't notice?" "You weren't looking," I said. "Not at me." He exhaled shakily. My daughter-in-law pointed at the envelope with a trembling hand. Is that related to all this?" I didn't answer. The morning sunlight hit the table again, brighter now, reflecting off the sealed flap of the envelope. The silence thickened. My son swallowed. "Mom, should we open it?" I met his eyes, letting him see the calm, the steadiness, the truth that had been building inside me for years. "You can," I said softly. "But once you do, nothing will be the same." And that was exactly how their lifestyle, built on my silence, began to collapse. Not with shouting. Not with chaos. But with truth. Quiet, undeniable truth. And the slow realization that they had never truly understood the woman who had been holding their world together. The moment those words left my lips, "You can, but once you do, nothing will be the same," a heavy stillness settled over the kitchen. Neither of them touched the envelope. Neither even reached toward it. They just stared as if the paper itself breathed. And as they stood frozen, I turned away, feeling the subtle tremble in my fingertips finally ease. Not from fear. From release. I walked back down the hallway, the soft creak of the old floorboards following me with each slow step. The air felt heavier behind me, thick with their confusion and dread, and I could almost feel the heat of their eyes on my back. But I didn't look at them. I wasn't done speaking with silence yet. Inside my room, I closed the door halfway, not to shut them out, but to give myself a small moment of quiet before the storm I knew was coming. The room felt dimmer than before, the early sunlight falling in long, gentle stripes across my quilt. I sat on the edge of the bed, letting my hands rest on my thighs until my breath slowed. Then I reached beneath the bed frame. My fingers brushed the familiar edges of the large binder, the one with the worn navy cover and slightly bent corners from being opened so many nights. I pulled it out carefully, holding the weight of it across my lap. It wasn't heavy in the physical sense, but emotionally, It carried years of things I wished I had never needed to record. Footsteps approached again, slow, hesitant. My son appeared in the doorway, his forehead creased, his whole posture softened in a way I wasn't used to seeing. "Mom," he said quietly, "you left the envelope there. Should we open it now?" "Not yet," I said. "There's something you need to see first." His gaze followed my hand as I lifted the binder. He frowned, then stepped inside and closed the door the rest of the way. He sat in the same chair as before, but now his knee didn't bounce as much. His hands didn't fidget. His voice carried a different tone, uncertainty layered with something close to fear. "What is that?" he asked. "Truth," I said. I opened the binder slowly. The faint scent of paper and ink rose, a familiar smell from the nights I worked on it while they slept. The first page was a dated list of monthly transfers. Exact amounts, times, confirmation numbers. My son leaned forward, squinting at the handwriting. "You wrote all of this down?" "Yes." "When?" I traced a line of ink with my fingertip. "Start to finish?" "A year and a little more." He blinked fast, as if trying to understand why such a thing was even necessary. I turned the page. The next section held printed screenshots. Conversations they thought I had never seen because they never imagined I could navigate the phone they handed me dismissively. Little comments, small jabs, thinly disguised insults. Nothing explosive. Nothing dramatic. Just steady drops of disrespect over time. My son's face tightened. These messages. Who wrote these?" "I think you know," I said softly. He swallowed, his eyes lowering to the page. I watched the shift in his expression as he read his wife's words. Complaints about my slow pace, sarcasm about my old habits, her frustration over my needing reminders. None of it was cruel in an obvious way, but every line carried the weight of disregard. "She didn't mean it like that," he said quickly. "Did you?" I asked, turning to the next screenshot, one where he had replied. His face changed again, this time flushing with shame. He didn't deny recognizing his own words. He didn't try to explain why he had written them. He just shut his eyes for a long second, then opened them slowly, looking older. "I didn't know this upset you," he whispered. "You didn't ask," I said. His breath caught. Before he could speak again, my daughter-in-law's voice rang from the kitchen. Not angry this time. Not sharp. Just scared. "Something's wrong with my phone again. The bank says the account is locked. And our electric bill. Mom, why are the alerts coming to you?" I didn't react. My son did, though. He turned toward the doorway instinctively. "She'll figure it out," I said, turning another page. He paused, then slowly sat back down. The next section of the binder held photographs. Not dramatic ones, just snapshots of small things. A pile of dishes I wasn't supposed to wash but ended up doing anyway. A bag of groceries I bought after they told me they were too tight that week. The medicine cabinet I filled every month, though they claimed they would handle it. Each picture had a tiny date written in the corner. These aren't serious," my son said weakly. "No," I replied. "They're just moments. Moments you never noticed." I turned to the next set of pages, printed copies of voicemails they didn't know I saved. I had transcribed them because I didn't trust that my phone wouldn't mysteriously break one day. His wife's voice complaining about driving me to appointments. Him saying he wished I wasn't so dependent. Small things, but repeated. My son pressed a hand against his forehead. "Mom, why didn't you tell us you kept all of this?" "Because if I told you," I said, "you would have tried to talk me out of feeling hurt instead of listening to why I was hurt." He sat very still, absorbing that. The house made a sudden noise, a thump followed by hurried footsteps. My daughter-in-law appeared in the doorway, her cheeks flushed, her breathing uneven. "I can't access anything," she said. "Not one account. Not even the utilities. And the credit union says they need the primary account holder to confirm identity." Her eyes darted to the binder. "Is that why? Is that what you're showing him?" "Yes," I said. She took a step closer, her eyes narrowing at the pages. "You've been keeping records?" "I have," I answered. "Why would you do that?" she demanded, her voice climbing. "Why would you spy on us?" "I didn't spy," I said calmly. "I observed. There's a difference." She grabbed the chairs back as if to steady herself. "This is ridiculous. You're twisting everything. You're trying to make us look bad. I closed the binder gently. No. I'm letting you see what was already there. She looked at my son, expecting him to defend her. But he didn't speak. He didn't move. He just stared at the closed binder like it held something radioactive. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said louder. Every family has misunderstandings. This wasn't misunderstanding, I said. It was dismissal. Of what? She snapped. Of me. Her jaw tightened. I stood up slowly, holding the binder against my chest. The weight of it pressed into me, but instead of burden, it felt like validation. Years of small injuries that never bruised the skin but bruised the spirit. I walked past her into the hallway. She stared after me, unsure whether to follow. But my son rose and came behind me, quieter than before. Mom, he said, if you had all this, why didn't you say something earlier? I opened the binder again, flipping to one of the dated pages from earlier in the year. A calendar marked with appointments I had gone to alone. I did try, I said. But whenever I spoke, you both heard inconvenience instead of concern. He looked at the notes, carefully written details of days when I waited for rides that never came, when appointments were forgotten, when promises were casually broken. I didn't know, he whispered. You didn't ask, I repeated softly. My daughter-in-law stepped closer. What do you want from us? An apology? Is that why you're showing all of this? I don't want anything, I said. Not from you. The quietness of that answer stunned them more than anger would have. My son's voice cracked. Then why now? Why bring all this out today? Because today, I said, you finally saw the consequences of depending on someone you didn't respect. Silence. Long, heavy, unavoidable. I walked to the small desk in the corner of the room, placed the binder down and rested my hand on its cover. The pages inside didn't shake. Neither did I. Behind me, I heard my daughter-in-law's breath hitch. My son whispered something too soft to catch. They both stared at the binder like it held answers and accusations in equal measure. It's not too late to fix things, my daughter-in-law said suddenly, desperation creeping into her voice. That depends, I replied, on what you mean by fix. She didn't answer. My son leaned against the doorframe, his face pale. What happens now? I met his eyes. Now, I said softly, you begin to understand. And I let the silence settle again, deep and honest, because silence finally was no longer the language of my suffering. It was the language of my power. And the moment that power settled quietly inside me, the house shifted in a way I could feel but not yet explain. My son stood in the doorway, silent and pale, as if the binder on the desk had drained something from him. My daughter-in-law hovered behind him, clutching her phone like it was the last thing she controlled in this house. Neither spoke. Neither breathed fully. They were both waiting, for me, for the next blow, for a truth they sensed was coming but couldn't name. I closed the binder gently and rested my palm on the cover. The room felt oddly warm, though the hallway behind them carried a cold draft. Maybe it was the shift inside me. Maybe it was the shift inside them. But something had changed and none of us could pretend otherwise. My son finally stepped forward. Mom, he said quietly, is there more we need to talk about? There is, I answered, lifting the binder and holding it against my chest. And it's not written in here. He swallowed hard, as if bracing for something that might rearrange the rest of his life. My daughter-in-law's eyes tracked every movement I made, her expression tight and alert, like a cornered animal unsure whether to run or defend itself. I walked past them into the hallway. Each step felt steady, almost ceremonial, and they followed closely, silent, tense, aware that whatever I was about to show them would matter. The envelope still waited on the kitchen table, untouched, like a crack in the earth neither of them wanted to step near. I pulled out the chair and sat down, placing the binder beside me. They stood across from me, my son with his hands on the back of the opposite chair, my daughter-in-law gripping the edge of the counter. You said, she began with a trembling voice she tried to disguise, that once we opened it, things wouldn't be the same. That's correct. She bit the inside of her cheek. So this envelope, it's about the finances? In part, I said. But not in the way you expect. My son slowly lowered himself into the chair, finally sitting for the first time since all this began. His elbows rested on his knees, his fingers woven tightly together. Mom, he murmured, just tell us. Please. I reached for the envelope, not dramatically, not slowly, but with the same calm intention that had guided everything else this morning. The paper felt cool beneath my fingertips. I prepared these papers months ago, I said. Before any arguments. Before the card decline. Before the binder. Months? My daughter-in-law echoed. You've been planning something for months? Yes. Her face strained, and for the first time since I had known her, she truly looked unsure of herself. Not angry. Not irritated. Just lost. My son leaned forward. Why didn't you tell us? You wouldn't have understood, I said gently. And you certainly weren't ready to hear it. Their eyes darted to the envelope again. I watched their breaths shorten, watched their shoulders tighten. I slid the envelope toward my son. This belongs to you, I said. He hesitated. His hand hovered over it but didn't touch. What is it? Open it, I said. He looked at his wife, then slowly worked a finger under the flap. The paper opened with a soft tear that seemed louder in the quiet kitchen than it should have been. He pulled out the stack of documents and unfolded the first page. His eyes scanned the lines. Then froze. He blinked once. Twice. Fully. My daughter-in-law stepped closer. What is it? He didn't speak. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. Let me see, she snapped anxiously, reaching for the paper. He didn't stop her. He didn't even look at her. He just handed her the page without moving his gaze from the rest of the documents. She scanned the top line and her face crumpled. No, this isn't real. This can't be real. It is, I said quietly. What does it mean? My son whispered, his voice shaking. I didn't answer immediately. I let them read. The names. The dates. The signatures. The designations. It means, I finally said, that I made changes. Significant ones. My daughter-in-law clutched the paper like she might tear it. You changed everything? Without telling us. Why? You gave me reasons, I said softly. Many reasons. She shook her head in disbelief. This isn't fair. You blindsided us. I gave you years, I replied. You chose not to notice them. My son lowered the second page, his hands trembling now. Mom, these are beneficiary forms. Yes. And they're not us. That's correct. My daughter-in-law's voice cracked. Then who did you put instead? Who could possibly? I held up a hand. Not yet. She stopped speaking instantly. You'll read all of it, I continued. You'll see the details. But before you do, you need to understand why. My son lifted his eyes to mine. Tell us. Do either of you know, I asked, how long I've been paying for things you assumed were yours? How long I've been covering, fixing, cleaning up, smoothing over? We didn't ask you to do that, my daughter-in-law said quickly. I smiled faintly. You didn't use words. You used expectation. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. You told me you would help manage things, I said. But over time I watched my efforts become invisible and your demands grow louder. My son winced. And when I tried to express hurt, I continued, you both told me I was overreacting. Neither denied it. This isn't about punishing you, I added gently. It's about correcting something that should have been corrected long ago. My daughter-in-law's voice dropped to a whisper. You're cutting us out. I'm choosing fairness, I replied. But we're your family, she cried. Family, I said softly, is defined by behavior. Not labels. That struck her like a blow. She blinked back tears, though she tried to keep her jaw firm. My son rubbed his forehead. Mom, if we weren't the ones you chose, then who did you choose? His voice carried something different now. Not entitlement. Not anger. Just a fearful curiosity. I didn't answer. Instead I tapped the envelope. It's all written there. They both stared at the documents, afraid to keep reading, afraid not to. My daughter-in-law looked up at me suddenly, her eyes sharp with suspicion. Did you give everything to some charity? Or a neighbor? Or someone we barely know? No. Then who? I felt my chest tighten with a mixture of sadness and resolve. The truth was never meant to wound. It was meant to belong to the one who earned it. You will find the name on the last page, I said. My son thumbed through the stack, his breath uneven. But when he reached the final page, he stopped. His eyes widened, but he didn't turn the document for his wife to see. Instead he held it close, staring at the name as if seeing a ghost. My daughter-in-law stepped forward. "Who is it?" He didn't answer. "Who?" she repeated louder. He slowly lowered the paper to his lap, his voice barely audible. "It's not us." "That much I figured," she snapped. "But who is it?" He lifted his eyes to me, searching for explanation, for confirmation, for understanding. "Why her?" he asked softly. And there was a crack in his voice. A question loaded with memory. A truth he didn't want to confront. My daughter-in-law snatched the paper from his hands. She read the name. Her face went pale. "Her," she whispered. "You gave everything to her?" "I did." "Why?" she demanded, her voice breaking. I folded my hands on the table, calm and steady. "That," I said, "is a conversation we will finish soon." My son looked from me to the documents and back again, the weight of the revelation sinking deeper with every breath. My daughter-in-law whispered the name again under her breath, almost to herself, almost in disbelief. And neither of them noticed that the clock on the wall ticked past a new minute, marking the moment their control finally fractured. The moment the truth began to reshape the ground beneath their feet. The moment the beneficiary reveal started to unravel everything they once assumed was theirs. But the why, the final piece, that would come later. Not now. Not yet. And neither she nor my son noticed the clock ticking past another minute, marking the quiet moment when their control truly shattered. When their assumptions collapsed. When the truth finally took its rightful place in the center of the room. I watched both of them carefully. Their shoulders stiff. Their breathing uneven. Their eyes glued to the final page like it was written in fire. And I felt something inside me settle. Something that had been restless for years. My son finally exhaled. "Mom, why her?" His voice wasn't angry anymore. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't even confused. It was small. Like a boy standing in front of a truth he had ignored for too long. I folded my hands on the table. "Because she earned what you assumed belonged to you." My daughter-in-law blinked hard. "Earned? What could she possibly have done to deserve this more than us?" I leaned back slightly. She listened to me. Those 4 words hit the room with more force than shouting ever could. My daughter-in-law's mouth parted as if to argue, but nothing came. My son looked down at the papers again, his eyes scanning the signature lines, the dates, the official stamps. "You gave everything to your granddaughter," he whispered. "Yes. She's just a girl." "She is a girl," I agreed. "A girl who sat with me on the porch without looking at her phone. A girl who asked how I slept, how my doctor visit went, how I felt. A girl who noticed my birthday card on the counter and wrote one of her own when she realized none of you had." Silence. Thick. Heavy. My daughter-in-law took a slow step forward. "So you gave her everything because she visited you?" I shook my head. "I gave her everything because she treated me like a person." My son pressed his hands over his face. "Mom, we didn't know you felt so alone. You didn't ask." He paused, letting the truth settle. Then he lowered his hands and looked straight at me. "Can we fix this?" That question, the one so many older women wait years to hear, landed softly. Gently. But too late. "No," I said. "Not what has already been done." My daughter-in-law's eyes filled with something between guilt and panic. "We can change," she said quickly. "We'll do better. We'll make things right." "You will," I said. "But not for me." They both froze. My son leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said softly, "that I'm leaving." The shock on their faces rippled through the air like a sudden gust. My daughter-in-law grabbed the back of a chair for balance. My son's breath caught in his throat. You're moving out?" he asked, almost whispering the words. "I am." "But where will you go?" I let a small, tired smile tug at the corners of my mouth. "To someone who wants me there." My daughter-in-law's shoulders stiffened. "She's taking you in?" "Yes." "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice shaky. "We're your family. You belong here." I met her eyes, calm, steady, unbroken. Belonging isn't a place. It's a feeling. And I haven't felt it in this house for a long time. My son's voice cracked. "Mom, please, don't go like this." "I didn't come to this decision suddenly," I said. "I came to it slowly. one overlooked moment at a time. He dropped his head into his hands. I stood up from the table, the chair legs scraping gently against the floor. The sound felt symbolic, like a closing note, a soft ending to a song that had stretched far too long. I walked down the hallway to my room, my steps measured, almost ceremonial. The room greeted me with familiarity. My quilt, my stacked books, my soft cardigan draped across the chair. I opened my closet and pulled out the bag I had packed weeks ago before any of this began. Not because I intended to leave immediately, but because the act of packing reminded me I could. I placed the binder inside first. Not out of necessity, but because it symbolized the part of me that had fought silently for too long. My son appeared in the doorway again. His eyes were red. Don't go. Not today. I zipped the bag. If not today, then when? He stepped fully into the room. Give us a chance. Let us try. I gave you many, I said gently. He flinched. I reached for my cardigan. He picked it up before I could and held it out for me like he used to when I was younger, and he wanted to show he could be useful. That memory hit me unexpectedly, softening something inside me. I slipped the cardigan on. He held the sleeves steady. For a moment, just a moment, we were ourselves again. Then I turned. My daughter-in-law stood behind him. Her arms were wrapped around her middle as if holding herself together. Can you please tell us what we did so wrong? She whispered. Her voice wasn't sharp anymore. It wasn't defensive. It was almost frightened. You stopped seeing me, I said. You saw my money, my help, my presence. But not me. Tears filled her eyes. I never meant to. I know, I said. And that's the saddest part. I walked toward the living room. They followed like quiet shadows. The morning sunlight had grown stronger now, spilling across the floorboards in warm rectangular patches. Outside, a car slowed on the street, my granddaughter's. I heard her door open. Her footsteps rushed up the walkway. Grandma, she called. Her voice, bright, warm, genuinely worried, filled the house like fresh air. My daughter-in-law stiffened. My son inhaled shakily. I walked to the front door and opened it. There she stood, my granddaughter, her eyes full of concern, her coat half-zipped, her hair pulled into a loose ponytail she'd clearly thrown together quickly. I got your message, she said, pulling me into a tight hug. Are you okay? I'm perfect, I whispered. She stepped inside and looked at my son and his wife. The silence between them was sharp but not cruel. More like a line being drawn clearly for the first time. My granddaughter glanced at the bag by my feet. Ready? Yes, I said. Wait, my son said, stepping forward. Just tell me one thing. I stopped. He swallowed hard. Are you doing this because you're angry? I turned to him. No. I'm doing it because I'm finally at peace. He looked down, tears catching the light. Will you come back someday? Maybe, I said gently. When this house feels like a home instead of a weight. My daughter-in-law wiped her cheek. I'm sorry, she whispered. I nodded. I know. My granddaughter picked up my bag. We should go, Grandma. I took one last look around the house. The walls. Fable. The staircase. The memories, good, bad, quiet, unnoticed. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel triumph. I felt free. I stepped outside. The sunlight touched my face, warm and soft. The air carried the faint scent of grass. A bird perched on the railing, fluttering its wings before lifting into the sky. My granddaughter opened the car door for me. I slid into the seat, sinking into the soft cushion. The door closed gently, shutting out the last bits of tension behind me. As we pulled away, I looked back once, just once. My son stood in the doorway, one hand against the frame, watching me with a mixture of regret and awakening. My daughter-in-law stood beside him, her arms crossed over her chest, not defensive, but holding herself through the shock of a truth she had never expected. They were smaller now in the distance. Fading. Not from my life. From my burden. My granddaughter reached over and touched my hand. Grandma, she whispered, you did the right thing. For the first time in years, I realized I truly believed that. I turned forward, watching the road unfold ahead of us. Open, wide, waiting. I know, I said softly. And the car carried me into a future where my silence finally belonged to me. I walked out whole. If this story touched you, shocked you, or reminded you of your own strength, subscribe. There are more powerful journeys waiting for you here.